Ladies and gentlemen, the boys are sort of back since half of us over the last 2 weeks are here. Welcome back to another edition of your favorite NFL podcast. The Sports Agents of Chaos are here, and our playoff coverage here in the month of January 2025, which is succeeding the 2024 NFL season, is here. Oh, yes, it's Dan True. It's here. Welcome back for another episode, ladies and gentlemen. The Iceman, of course, introing things per usual, my little soliloquy, and joining me on this edition of the program for the full time. We may have a cameo appearance here at some point by somebody, but joining me here for this full ride on this episode is the Games Master himself, Justin. Justin, how are we doing?
I'm doing well, Jarek. How are you? I know I missed last week.
No, doing good, man. Doing good. Living, working. Last week was a great episode for the most part, except my NFL playoff prediction record is terrible this year. Worst one I've had in a long time. We'll see if I can have any sort of turnaround here.
Listen, I think a lot of people got a lot of picks wrong last week, so
yeah. So it's been tough to say the very least, but I mean, we got a lot better football in this past week. We're going to break down those divisional round games, ladies and gentlemen, a bit here into the episode, and of course, we are going to go over and analyze the conference championship games. Justin and I here to give you our predictions live. If Bars and the Podfather are able to join us here in coming weeks, they can tell us retroactively what their predictions were. And wouldn't it be surprising if either of them just so happen to go 2-0, to say the very least, considering all of us have gotten some picks missed here and there. But before we get into all that, ladies and gentlemen, of course, we know we start with the fun. That is the tagline of the show, fun, football, and chaos. We begin with the fun. But before we get to another edition of everyone's favorite weekly game, we have a new segment to give to you all. As everybody here knows, last week we debuted a new segment here onto the program, and it will be back by popular demand every so often. Of course, you all know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Podfather's Dad Joke of the Week. We have this video submission. Justin, before I play this, did you listen back to what last week's Dad Joke of the Week was?
I skipped around. I didn't realize that this was a thing. I must have completely skipped it. I did see in the group chat something about doing it this week, and I was like, this is something I can get behind.
Yes, we knew you'd love it. So
yeah,
we're going to, this is going to be the second edition. To be fair to you, last week it was kind of like we put it in between topics because it took a little bit for the setup. You know, we have such an intricate operation here at SAOC, so sometimes things take a bit to get off the ground. But it was more, I think, after whatever our first talking point was last week. But it's at the very beginning this time, ladies and gentlemen. So without much of further ado, except with the video taking a little bit to play, we will play for all of you this week's Podfather's Dad Joke of the Week. I have not listened to this yet, so I'm very excited to see what it is. And it will be loading and playing momentarily.
Good morning, boys. Time once again for your Podfather's Dad Joke of the Week. And I actually have some very exciting news to tell you all about. You see, in a couple weeks, I'm starting a brand new job. Yes, I know, it's very, very exciting. I'm actually going to be working at a farm. Yes, at Old McDonald's farm. My job title is the CIEIO.
the scenery is my favorite part of that.
Honestly, scenery 10 out of 10. Audio was a little bit iffy there, Podfather. Got to give it a 5 out of 10 there. Not the cleanest of audio for the people.
Okay, never mind. We can go on. I have to come back now. I have to find out what last week's joke was.
So that is this week's edition of Podfather's Dad Joke of the Week. Oh, it's going to be hilarious going forward. If between last week and this week, if those are the first two he's sent us with, he's got a lot in the bag. You people think that he has the mind-blowing facts of the week to give us. Oh, guys, you ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet when it comes to the Dad Joke of the Week. It's going to be a good one, to say the very least.
Rick's got the dad jokes down, but I'm more known for my misremembering of mythological facts. I would say it's my Hercules ankle.
There you go.
Anyways,
that's perfect right there, ladies and gentlemen. So with that being said, let's move on to the, from a developing and budding long-term staple of the show to what has strangely become one of, like I've said in previous weeks, the podium of segments here in the show's history. It's time for another edition of Name That Player.
Yes, sir. So we're going to go to the Texas native who was drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. He has a career with 3 teams, 3 Pro Bowl selections, and 1 first-team All-Pro.
Ooh, okay. Texas native, 3 Pro Bowls, first-team All-Pro. It was I always forget one hint from each round. What was the last one that I'm missing of the info, or was that did I hit every one?
Texas native, 3 teams, 3 Pro Bowls, 1 All-Pro.
Oh, so okay, that's why I missed it. So he's played for 3 teams in his career.
Correct.
Okay. See, Texas is quite the football factory, eh? They've really done a good job here. Oh man. Okay. So Texas native, 3 Pro Bowls, 1 first-team All-Pro for 3 teams. So because my mind will always skip to recent players first, and if I can finagle my way to finding that, then that's where I tend to go. So a Texas native, 3 teams, 1 first-team All-Pro. So you know what's crazy? I would find it hard to believe. Not hard to believe. Well, sort of hard to believe because he was such an amazing. So the first player that's come to my mind, amazing player at his peak. I think he actually fits a lot of this. I just don't know if he's from Texas. I know he played. I'm fairly certain he must have played for 3 teams. I can only think of 2 off the top of my head. And he was such a great player when he was great, but it was only over a stretch of time that I think the accolades could match up. So I'm fairly confident in this first pick for myself. Justin, give me one of the most electrifying players that the league has seen since the start of the century. I'm saying that specifically because the NHL has been releasing quarter-century teams. I know you've seen me share a couple of them, Rick. Give me, for my first guess, CJ2K Chris Johnson.
Ooh, that is a good shout. It is not, but I'm pretty sure he fits most of that criteria. So that is a very, very good shout. I think you're on the right track, but we're gonna move towards receivers because this is a player that has 75 receiving touchdowns in their career.
Ooh.
Yes. Most of which is with 1 team.
Okay.
And he was drafted since 2010.
Okay. Since 2010. So he's been drafted since 2010.
He was in one of those drafts from now all the way back to 2010.
Well, definitely not the last couple of years. Oh, man.
That's fair. It would be hard to play for 3 teams, and you were drafted this year. Although one player did do it this year.
And well, I was going to say it'd be tough to fair, but he don't got 75 career touchdowns.
No, he does not. Oh, I don't know what just happened here, but it looks like we lost our host. I hope his internet didn't go out. Let's check. Hold on 1 second. Guys, I don't know if he's listening, but maybe I would reveal it. It'd be so funny if he came back and had no idea. This has become the Justin show. I don't know what to do here because we're not talking about anything specific. I don't know how to rant on nothing.
We're back.
How do I rant on nothing, Jerg?
Yeah,
I just said more dad jokes.
I have no idea what just happened. Apparently, I did temporarily lose internet there, but I'm back.
Nice. Everyone else in the audience knows the person now, except for you.
Wait a minute.
Hello?
Was that because of you?
Yes, it was.
How did you get to my internet? My modem is inside. It's literally behind this wall.
Rick is
I've got my ways. Genius. I've got my ways.
Welcome, Podfather.
Hey, what's up? What's happening?
How are we doing? Have you heard the first 2 hints for this edition of Name That Player?
I have not, but my first 2 guesses are going to be
Wait, don't give. I haven't given my second guess yet. Just give your first one.
Okay, my first guess is going to be D'Angelo Williams, with no clues whatsoever.
No.
It's a funny name to say. All right. So what
Okay,
are
yes.
the hints? What are the hints? What's happening here?
Okay. So the first hint was native of Texas, played for 3 teams, 3 Pro Bowls, 1 All-Pro.
Okay.
The second one is a receiver who has 75 receiving touchdowns, most of which was with 1 team.
Okay.
Did I give the college, Jerg?
I don't think you gave the college. You had stated that he was from Texas.
All right. Usually I give the college in the second round, so we'll say Oklahoma State.
Well, it's definitely not Justin Blackman. Shout out, poor Justin Blackman.
Jerg, is this Bobby Trees? Maybe.
I don't think Robert Woods has 75 touchdowns in his career.
Did he not go to Oklahoma State though?
He may have, but I don't think it's him. So my first guess, Rick, because you missed it. So my first guess was CJ2K, Chris Johnson, because
East Carolina.
Because I think the thing is when Justin, I'm trying to connect the two together. So when Justin mentions the career statistics, which is the 75 touchdowns, well, I thought of CJ before hearing that, but now that he adds that, I'm thinking, okay, this player, long career, obviously was very successful, but he was only recognized
drafted since 2010. It's a recent player.
It's a recent player. So we're thinking now wide receiver Rick drafted within the last 15 years or so that had obviously a good career to get the 75 touchdowns, but only whether it was because of competition in a season or other things, he only has 3 Pro Bowls and 1 All-Pro. It kind of narrows down because I feel like for the most part, the receivers that are within that category have a little bit more recognition. There is a guy who's slowly materializing in my mind. But again, the hookup for me is I don't know if he was born in Texas. And now I don't even know if he necessarily went to Oklahoma State. But
well, you got to assume that a lot of football players are born in Texas at this point. Texas, like you said, is a football factory.
That's true. Texas, Cali, Florida.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
All right, I'll give. Or do you want to guess, Rick?
Yeah, go for it. Who's the guy you're thinking of?
Dez Bryant.
That's a good gesture. It is Dez Bryant.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
See, within that range, baby. Although
born in Lufkin, Texas, was at Oklahoma State from 2007 to 2009. Drafted in the first round in the 2010 draft by the Dallas Cowboys.
What was because you mentioned he played for 3 teams. What are the other 2 teams?
The next team he was on was the New Orleans Saints. And then he took a year off and was on the Baltimore Ravens in 2020.
Wow.
He was also the NFL receiving touchdowns leader in 2014.
See, that's that. I would be shocked if that wasn't his first team All-Pro season, but you never know, honestly.
It was?
There you go. There you go. See, it's what we were talking about. When you have a guy that has achieved what he achieved there, just think about for Dez Bryant. Look at who around the same time, whether just before or just after him, was in the league and was competing for on the NFC side for Pro Bowls, and then just overall in the NFL for all pros. You're talking about Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, right? Even if we look at the AFC just in terms of the all-pro stuff, very good players like an AJ Green. Amari Cooper was pretty good when he was drafted, right? There are a lot of top tier, and then OBJ, Jarvis Landry, a lot of top tier guys drafted around the same time as Dez Bryant. Dez Bryant is one of those guys where his accolades, individual accolades, don't necessarily match the kind of career he had. You'd probably say that for a lot of guys, honestly, for being drafted in the 2010s, because just so much competition, right?
And you can say it for a lot of Cowboys in general too, to be honest with you, because they've had a rough go of it. The rough only gets rougher for them, obviously. But
very true. Very true. And honestly, like you could even like for even the top players that do have the individual accolades, like Drew Brees never won MVP in his career. Just ingest that for a second. He never won an MVP award. The guy with the most 5,000-yard passing seasons in the history of the league. But just like you look at who he had to go up against year after year: Manning, Brady, Rodgers, Adrian Peterson, the 1 year in 2012, which was the last time a non-quarterback won the freaking award. And then, I mean, he wasn't necessarily at the peak of his powers anymore when this guy was winning the MVP, but like Patrick Mahomes, probably like Mahomes' first MVP sort of aligns with like the last years of Brees' career. So it's insane to say the very least to think about it. But Justin, I'd say, what was the third round of hints there, Justin?
I probably would have gave his teams the fact that he was the leader in touchdowns.
I think we probably would have gotten it if you had.
Definitely.
I mean,
the third round's supposed to be the most obvious one.
Yeah, I would have also gone for a crucial catch, no catch in the playoffs because that was a pretty big one.
Yeah, you could have just said he may or may not have caught a ball against the Packers in the postseason.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That was a catch.
It was.
Well, the NFL would argue that, to say the very least.
I'm not sure the NFL knows, so.
Yeah, that's fair. Fair. The NFL doesn't know too much, but what the NFL does seem to somewhat know is who's going to be coaching some teams in 2025, ladies and gentlemen. We call that a transition in the business. Head coaching hirings for the 2025 campaign. Now, to simplify everything, because we're going to talk about these coaches most likely in more detail, if not next week, in the coming weeks, once we get all 7 coaches hired, because there were 7 jobs that ended up being made available this cycle. So we're going to be talking about, very quickly, succinctly, the 6 head coaches that were hired, and then we're going to, well, actually, yeah, the 6 head coaches hired, just briefly discuss them, thoughts, surprise, etc., etc. But we're also going to talk about general managers here very quick, because we have a couple general manager hirings as well. They don't have a tag for that, but we'll just talk about it here to begin with. So, Podfather, I'll throw the opinions here to you first. 3 new general managers were hired. 4 jobs available, 3 hired. The Titans, Raiders, and Jets have all made their general manager hirings. Mike Borgonzi for the Titans, the chief assistant GM, is now going to be their general manager. John Spytek, the Buccaneers assistant general manager, is going to Vegas to be their general manager. Not the only loss the Buccaneers have seen in the power structure. And was recent news by me, and I'll let Justin say the name, the New York Jets, Jets have hired a new general manager. And Justin, his name is?
It is, I forget, I put it down. I already had this issue before, Jared. Why would you put me on the spot?
You're fine.
Rand Carthen? What?
Moogie?
No.
It's Darren Moogie.
Not Rand Carthen. But yes, Darren Moogie, the Broncos assistant general manager to GM General George Patton, as I like to call him. So, Rick, I'm going to very quickly throw it to you, just because like when assistant general managers are hired, it's always like a 50-50 of like, yes, they've been around front offices, and I have been one on this show to say like, hey, assistant general managers play a lot more of a role than what the average sports fan thinks. It's just they're more behind the scenes, right? Like they help get these things off the ground behind the scenes in such a major way. So we can't really speak too much to, hey, we know exactly what these guys did. Like maybe John Spytek had a clear role in bringing in Baker Mayfield those couple off seasons ago, right? But we don't definitively know that because his name isn't necessarily put on there. So Rick, what do you think, just on a broad basis, of the 3 hirings for 3 of the 4 teams that needed GM? Because as we know, there is a 4th team here. We'll talk about it in a couple of moments.
Well, I feel like these hires are kind of like the wait and see ones, because when you bring on a general manager, it's not a recognizable name that people are aware of unless it's a GM from another team that moves over to somebody else's team. So yeah, assistant GMs, you got to give them their shots and all of that. I think it's interesting that the Chiefs assistant general manager is moving on. I mean, you're leaving a team that's in line for a 3P potentially, and you decided that it's time for you to go and find greener pastures somewhere else. That's a bit interesting to me. But these guys have had variable modicums of success in their roles, and I think what it comes down to is, can they have a good relationship with the players and the head coach? More importantly, do they have a good relationship with the owners? Because if they don't have a good relationship with the owners going in, that's the ones who's paying their salaries. Those are the ones who will fire them if it doesn't go very well. And unfortunately for these guys, you look at where they're going, you look at the ownership groups, and there's not a lot of stability. There's not a lot you can say that, can provide them with comfort of, what, if it doesn't work out the first year around, maybe you'll stick around because, you said it. The Raiders and the Jets are two of these teams that brought in GMs. What do we know about their ownership group? Mark Davis loves P.F. Chang's and Woody Johnson loves controversy. So, it's not really a great endorsement for these guys for their first go-arounds, but, if they can come in there with some promises and make some good moves and at least improve upon what were terrible years for their teams in the past, they might have some staying power there. But then again, we thought Joe Douglas was the answer in New York, and he simply wasn't. So, because Woody Johnson decided, I'm going to listen to Brick and the other son, whose name I can't remember right now, a Methuselah or whatever his name is, I don't know. Listen to them instead of, listen to the common reason. So,
other son, I think, was Medulla Oblongata, if memory serves.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. Justin, kind of like Rick is saying, you can only grade a new general manager, first-time GM so much. Now, to be fair, I love it when we get new general managers and head coaches. Like, I love new blood being in the leagues. Now, I say this partially as an NHL fan who, as Rick can attest to, we've had basically the same 40 names for both head coaches and general managers for the last 25 years of hockey. So it's very nice to see when new blood gets hired into leagues. And these are three new names, Justin, that Rick is kind of mentioning. You have the Buccaneers assistant GM, who, if we're assuming he's been there for a while, he was there for the Super Bowl year, if the timeline is as we think it is. The Chiefs GM, which, as Rick's mentioned, or the new GM for the Titans, the Chiefs assistant GM, yes, he's leaving a team that has success, but once you've had the success, you have the championships on your resume. Now you want to go try to do it on your own, is the logic. And then you have a Jets team that is probably, again, these teams know, it's an inner circle thing. There's probably, these guys have had to have been praised plenty, and so now they're getting the opportunity. So, Justin, what do you think would be the key thing for these three first-time general managers? Not so much of a reaction from you, but maybe more so, what do you think is going to be the biggest thing for each of them to have to kind of get nailed down here over the coming months? Because it's some very early tests for these guys just coming up here in the next, 6 to 8 weeks.
Well, over the coming months or over their next tenure? Because it doesn't matter what anything that happens over the next couple months if they don't start winning. It's really what it is. It's a success-driven league. You come in and you dismantle a team, and all of a sudden they're 2-14 or 2-15 next year. It's not looking great for your tenure. It doesn't matter if the moves that you made in the offseason look fantastic. It doesn't matter if you look like a genius, because it's a results-driven league, and you can come in and, especially with these very fickle and unceremonious owners, you don't have success, they're going to kick you out. There's only 32 jobs in this league, and people want them. And if you're not going to do a good enough job and you're going to screw it up, it's very easy to find a replacement.
True. And really, as we kind of mentioned, with some of this ownership, some hard-headed people, right? It's people that necessarily don't make the best choices. So you're going to have to show at least some sort of result right away, no matter what that would be. So those are your three general manager hirings and our quick thoughts on them. Again, it's always tough to kind of talk about guys who don't necessarily know what they had their hand in, but let's assume that these three guys all had some sort of hand in the success in their teams, at least the recent success in terms of the Broncos. I'll give credit to the assistant GM. I don't think it was his decision to hire Nathaniel Hackett and trade for Russell Wilson. I'll put that squarely on Peyton and Elway. So let's give the guy a little bit of leeway just for the Jets fans here. So let's move on to the actual head coaching hirings. 6 of the 7 positions filled. Podfather, I'm going to throw it to you first. We know we have you for a very limited time, so whether you want to go guns blazing on each one, or if there's first 2 that you really want to sink your teeth into discussion-wise, and then Justin and I can take it from there.
All right, so here's the thing. I loved Aaron Glenn as a player. I thought he was a phenomenal cornerback. My thing is, the Jets made a hire, which was a good hire for them, but they made a hire off of one of his worst games. Like his most like the "What have you done for me lately?" is that it's like the worst game that he's had was that they allowed 45 points to Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. And that's tricky. It's a tricky hire to bring in a guy who, year in and year out, his defense in Detroit has been boom or bust. I mean, I remember the first episode, like first show we ever did, the first season we ever did, where we did the pick challenge. The first game was that Seattle-Detroit barn burner where Geno Smith had that Ring of Honor start, and the Lions allowed like 500 plus yards on defense. So, if Aaron Glenn surrounds himself with the right people, I guess that makes sense. That's a good hire for them. I think Ben Johnson might have been the better hire because it would have been a change. But listen, he wanted to go to Chicago, and that's where he went. I think that's a good combination between him and Caleb Williams. But we'll see how much leeway the McClaskeys give them. I'm not quite sure, but we'll see what happens there. Pete Carroll to the Raiders, really interesting. But I think they're in the market for a new quarterback. So will Pete Carroll and Shedeur Sanders make a good combination? That's the real question mark that I have. If the Raiders get Cam Ward, I think that's probably better for them because that's one less distraction that they'll have. But if it's Carroll and Shedeur, oh boy, that's going to be a lot of fun. Liam Cohen, didn't really like him as an offensive coordinator in Tampa, to be honest with you. But it's interesting that he's there for a year after Canales leaves and all of a sudden gets a head coaching job. So, he moves a little bit up the panhandle to a snowy Jacksonville. Snowy. Hello. Have you seen the weather lately? That's crazy. We'll see how that works out. I know that was a bit of a controversial move, but listen, that happened because Shad Khan came to his senses and made Jurg a very happy Albanian and fired Trent Baalke. So, we can't do anything better than that. And last but not least, let me do my best impersonation here about one hire in particular. And you'll know who I'm trying to impersonate when I say Dallas Cowboys. Brian Schottenheimer does not deserve a head coaching job in this league. And it is mind-blowing that the Cowboys said, okay, well, our two coordinators that are in the conference championship of the NFC, Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn, or even Cliff Kingsbury, we'll bring them on. They're young coaches. They're good minds. Nope. We want a retread, and we want a Schottenheimer. Keep it in the glory and the power of how things used to be. Ridiculous. That is a mindless, boneheaded move by Jerry Jones to hire him. And I hope the Cowboys lose every game next season because remember way back when we said the car analogy that Schottenheimer was the one doing navigation? Where the heck are they going now with Schottenheimer leading that team? Oh, ridiculous, awful, and so hilarious too. I think Giants fans, even though their teams were not good this year, they're going to look at that and they're going to say, you know what? At least we're not the Cowboys. So, yeah, I do have a limited time. We're actually going to head in now, but those are my thoughts, my mini rant podium. I said the rant podium for later on. By the way, audio for the dad joke, 6:45 in the morning. Don't recommend doing it ever again. So, have fun, boys. Enjoy the rest of the show. I'll be listening as I'm doing work. Take care, boys.
Take care, Podfather. Fantastic stuff. We got a mini. We got some hot takes right there from the Podfather. It seems, Justin. So.
Yeah, I mean that's super hot. As a Jets fan, we understand what Brian Schottenheimer is.
That's true.
I don't root for the guy to not have success. Hopefully he's good, and hopefully they see something that we didn't see, and
right.
The Cowboys could be relevant again, I guess. But
let's start with him, Justin, because that's the most recent of the hires happening late last night. Brian Schottenheimer, who was the Cowboys offensive coordinator for the past 2 seasons, is now, and he was a coaching analyst in 2022. So he's been with the Cowboys for 3 years now. He is now going to be the head coach, the head poobah, as some would say, there for the whole thing. In reality, Jerry Jones is the head coach / general manager / owner / everything for that team.
Basically, what you're telling me.
For Schottenheimer, I guess if there's one thing you could say, I mean, he's been around the NFL for a long time. He got his first 2 roles as an assistant in 97-98, went away to college for a handful of seasons before coming back into the league with Washington. He's been with the Chargers, as Rick had mentioned, as you guys know. He was the Jets OC from 2006 to 2011. He was the Rams OC from 2012 to 14. Went back to college for a year for Georgia in 2015. Then back in the NFL with the Colts for a couple years, the Seahawks for a couple years, the Jags 2021 passing game coordinator, and then for the last couple of years with the Dallas Cowboys. So, I mean, if there's one thing you can at least say, he's been around. He's 51 years old, so it's like he has 2 decades of experience. He's a pretty relatively young guy for the most part to compared to what some coaches get hired at one age. So
Yeah.
when you look at it, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something here, Justin. I guess maybe because Dak was injured this year and the roster construction wasn't the best, you could kind of point to that. If Dak is healthy to start 2025, and maybe they could try to balance out, maybe they get like a decent running game back in. Like, what could we expect from Schottenheimer and the Cowboys?
Well, because I'm not sure, man. Because wasn't he the leader of the offense? I mean, he was the offensive head coach that you brought in to run this team. Like, what role did Schottenheimer really have there? It's a head scratching move. I mean, I'm not in the Cowboys locker room. I'm not sure. I'm assuming Jerry is in the Cowboys locker room, but like,
we think.
I don't understand letting McCarthy go and then bringing in his backup. I mean, again, maybe he's seen something over the last few years that we haven't. There's a reason Schottenheimer keeps getting jobs. He knows what he's talking about to an extent, but I don't see him as the long-term solution of a head coach in Dallas. Yeah. Unless you're trying to tank this year and then you're going to get Dak's money off the books, you're going to reset. But like, for the first time in a couple of years, Dallas doesn't really seem to have a direction for multiple years in a row. I mean, last year, everyone and their grandmother said, man, what a crazy free agent running back class. The Cowboys really could use a free agent running back. And also the best ones want to go there. And they didn't even call.
Right.
And now they said, all right, well, like you had an injury-ridden season, but let's face it, you were kind of like offensively relevant with Mike McCarthy. He's a free agent. It's not like you're not going to get a restructure done. They didn't get a restructure done.
Yeah. No restructure.
I don't know what's going on in Dallas, and I'm not sure that they do either.
Yeah. It's like, honestly, when you mention it, you look back to last year and just the reports coming out that the Cowboys weren't calling, not just even running backs, just in general for the most part. Like, didn't their first signing was it like until day 4 or 5 of free agency basically last year?
They
like,
didn't do anything last year, dude.
It took them a while. No, they did sign 1 or 2 players. It was nobody big, but they did finally sign someone. But like to the point of, yeah, they didn't really do anything. Like they were kind of like, people were joking like they were asleep at the wheel.
They signed
Eric
Zeke.
Kendricks. They signed Zeke. They also signed Kendricks. They took him away from San Fran. There was that whole thing. He originally agreed to go to San Francisco, and then he reneged on that and went over to Dallas. So it's like a decent linebacker there. But like, to the point still standing, like, yes, they essentially didn't do anything. But like, I'm basically what we're saying is like they didn't call. They didn't seem to really do. Now, is that because of the cap situation? Like, because they knew they had the contracts they have to deal with? Like, whatever the thing was, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like you can't allow yourself to be that unprepared as an NFL team, as an organization, as a professional football team. You can't be that unprepared. It can't be an excuse of, well, we weren't ready. What do you mean you weren't ready? So you have that. Then you go into this year and you just you go through this tough season, the injuries and all that, and then look at even the exiting of McCarthy, because like you said, there was the alleged, like, maybe there's going to be a renegotiation, Then we hear during or after the wild card round, like the Cowboys, they declined the Bears to even want to interview. Now, I think that's
my favorite part of the situation. Is like, we're not going to re-sign him, but like,
no one can talk to, like, that basically all but costs McCarthy a coaching gig, unless the Saints are going to run with him, which, I mean, they might. We don't know, but like, it's one of those things that it's kind of mind-boggling, right?
Shocking.
Like, it's they had to have, Jerry Jones had to have decided internally at some point during the season, well, we're not going to re-sign McCarthy. But then it's just like, no, you can't. We still might keep him. Then they just let him go. And then because of that, let's forget them screwing Mike McCarthy over. It screwed them over because then it locked them out of the negotiation window for like Glenn and Johnson at least, let's say, and some of the other coaches that were in the playoffs, right? For whoever competed. So you screw over McCarthy, but you screwed yourself. And then it's like these guys, like, you saw the reports when Aaron Glenn went to the Jets. It's like the plan was to keep him in the building until they got the contract done. multiple meetings, I'm sure, between the Bears and Johnson. Like this stuff takes a while, and if you're the Cowboys, forget second, you were probably settling for like the third options at that point for head coaches. So they just make I don't safe in terms of heavy quotes of like safe choice if they just keep it in house, but I don't know, because like you said, then we need to question, like, was Mike McCarthy not the guy calling plays? Like, what did Schottenheimer have to do with creating the playbook with McCarthy? Like, I talked about with the GM, so many things are sometimes like left up to questions when it comes to coordinators. Like, you think Eric Bieniemy and his time in Kansas City, and it was constantly a question of like, well, what role did he play when Andy Reid is there, right? Although, for the record, him as the OC, a lot better offense than when Matt Nagy's been the OC. I'm just saying, but you look at guys like that who have to deal with those questions. We ask those questions to Schottenheimer, and Schottenheimer gets a coaching job. Really? And then remember, the Dion rumor was a thing for Cal.
Yeah, I mean, even that would have made a little more sense. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see what was going. Like, I didn't even see him as a rumor. Like, I don't think anyone considered Shoddy like a legitimate option at head coach until Dallas was like, we're gonna take it. We're gonna keep him.
Yeah, like you assumed he was just like you need to interview multiple candidates. He's just there to like fill a candidacy quota. Like okay, like to be fair, probably most like some in-house guys get like at least a courtesy interview, right? Like, okay, you've been here for a bit, da. Like, if we gave you the job, what do you think would be the case? And like, what did Schottenheimer say, bro? Like, I don't get it.
What does he have?
What does he? what hidden long lost messages and pictures of Jerry Jones did he uncover that got him this job?
Pretty much.
That's the question. So now, Justin, that being said, you could argue that was not even the most chaotic coaching hiring situation in the league, because the Cowboys did all that, and the Jacksonville Jaguars said, "Hold my English-made brew," because the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I think his first name is Liam, right? Liam Cohen, the Buccaneers offensive coordinator. What a tale to weave, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the Bucs offensive coordinator for the second straight year is taking a head coaching job. Shout out to Baker Mayfield for getting people money, right? At the start of his career, offensive coordinators were being fired because they were garbage. Now he keeps getting new OCs because he's helping them get money, in terms of Dave Canales with the Panthers and now Cohen here with the Jags. But this wasn't the most, let's say, straightforward of processes. Jags bring in Cohen for an interview, right? They have conversations. Ultimately, he makes the decision to go back to the Buccaneers and renegotiates with them to become one of the highest paid coordinators in the league, right? It was said that he renegotiated and got like a nice little pay raise. Then, and keep in mind, people, this all happened within a span of like 24 to 48 hours. Like, we're talking about like boom, boom, boom. Like, it was consistent updates. This was not spanning a week. Then the news comes out that the Jaguars, after what baffled many league personnel keeping Trent Baalke, fired Trent Baalke. Now, did the next sip of water I had after I read that news feel just a little bit clearer after that? Maybe. Did the sip of water I had after Novak Djokovic had to withdraw from this past major in tennis, did that taste good? Possibly. But the confusion of the Khan family and choosing to let go of Trent Baalke, that's just, it's funny when you consider, remember, Justin, I forget if it was last week or the week before, there was like some big like Zoom meeting or whatever that the Khans had with reporters. And Shad Khan basically said that they'd be willing to fire Trent Baalke if that meant getting things done with Trent Baalke in the Zoom. Like, awkward. So awkward. But it doesn't really surprise me considering how awkward that family is, especially the son. Like, it's one of those things where you're just like, what is happening? So Trent Baalke gets fired. Then apparently Cohen is back to talking with the Jags. It's like, oh my God. And within hours after just going back to speak to them, he gets the gig, signs a contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is the head coach. Justin, chaos has ensued, to say the very least, with this one. Somehow they won up the Cowboys in being more chaotic.
I don't know. I mean, supposedly, the reason that it was so back and forth and things didn't work out in favor of the Bucks is because he said his kid was sick, but he was in communication with Todd Bowles, and he said he wanted to still consider it being a head coach because he thought it would be a good move for him. Like, I don't know. I mean, I get the idea. I mean, there's a big difference between the highest paid offensive coordinator and the lowest paid head coach. There just is. So you can't fault anyone for taking the bag, but like, I mean, and they also gave him all the minutes. I have nothing wrong with Liam Cohen per se, but like the back and forth, the flip flopping, like it was like a drama. It was like a sitcom going on out there, and people were just like, "Where is he? What's he doing?" Like, I mean, the only person that I feel bad for was Robert Saleh, who was supposedly going in for a second interview, although he said that he had never left because he had received this information already or for whatever reason. But yeah, so my question is now, who chooses the GM?
Which the Khan family has apparently said that he is likely going to roll in hiring the GM, which you're a Jets fan. You could speak to that. How is that situation like, Justin, when the head coach helps decide who the GM is?
In my experience, it hasn't been great. Although historically it has been good for certain teams. Like when you had like Parcells and he brought in Tannenbaum. Like, am I gonna sit here and say that the Jets weren't good with Parcells and Tannenbaum? They were. They were a very good team. But then you have the opposite when you have Rex and he brought in Idzik. Not as great. You want to sit here and tell me I liked the one move that Adam Gase did that I liked was he brought in Joe Douglas.
That's true.
I still think Joe Douglas was a good GM, even with his hands tied behind his back. He was on the Jets, so he was never going to win.
Yeah, and to be fair to Joe Douglas, he was realistically just one quarterback decision away. Or is it technically two because it's Wilson and Rodgers? But he was basically the dude built a really good team for the most part.
He was one away from doing it. He just had two chances at it. And unfortunately,
like that happens sometimes. But like the dude had, and also like Joe Douglas also didn't really get because he didn't hire Adam Gase because he fired Gase and then they got Saleh, right? Like Adam
Gase was the head coach and they kept the original GM, let him draft. And then they were like, Gase was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you letting this guy draft these people? And then they fired him like week 1, maybe a little bit before week 1, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And then Gase said, these are the people I'm willing to work with. These are the people that know what they're doing. And I got to say, he was right. Like I said, I liked Joe Douglas as a GM. I think there's lots of things that obviously didn't work out, but they said that on average, a GM hits, like legitimately hits on 35% of their draft picks. And that's like a high number. Joe Douglas did that.
Yeah, he was
definitely brought in the right free agents. I think Joe Douglas brought in, I mean, I guess it's hard to say he brought in the right coaches because coaching was obviously a struggle here.
That's the thing. Like what I was saying about Douglas is that he really only got one head coach with Saleh. Like most get two.
It's hard to say what he was able to do and what he wasn't because
that's fair.
The reports with the coaching and the ownership is real bad. And you don't know what's right and what's wrong and what's true. But after being a Jets fan for 30 years, I can't sit here and say I don't believe it.
No, I agree. I'm not like, let me be clear. I'm not critiquing Joe.
No,
Douglas.
I know.
I'm saying that unlike a lot of general managers, he only got like most GMs get a couple bullets in the chamber, right? They could fire some coordinators, which helps their first coach. They could get rid of the first coach. They get some coordinator. They could get rid of some signings. Joe Douglas had it felt like you mentioned it with hand tie. He never got his real second bullet with his head coach. He only ever got the first one because I'm not counting Adam Gase against him. Because like, come on now. I guess bring in Adam Gase to help you find a GM, I guess, because he can help you find a GM. You just can't, coach anymore, it seems, as a head coach. Maybe he could be a decent OC somewhere. I don't know. But like so now let's compare it to Jacksonville, where they have the GM, even though they shouldn't have at that point. They try to get a head coach, a guy to be their head coach. The guy says, I don't really want to work under that guy. and they fire Balky to bring in Liam Cohen. So first off, this is going to be interesting. They should, in theory, be hiring a GM anytime soon now because you got free agency, you got the decisions to make on the roster now in terms of contracts. You got the draft here coming up in a couple months. Like this is not stuff that's simple. And now you kind of have to, I mean, not hotshot it per se, like don't hire the first guy you interview, but you kind of make if the Jags, there's a bolt. If the Jags were a good organization, they in theory should hire their general manager before the end of the postseason. So it's one of those things where it's not like a hard set deadline I'm saying, but a logical thing of like, hey, you want to try to get in your guy before the games are over, give as much time as possible for him to get together with Cohen and figure everything out. Obviously, then has to play a role in getting the assistants in, even though I'm sure Cohen has like his list of names, obviously. But then it's like, all right, you need assistant general manager. What are you doing with the scouting? Because it's so close, you're probably going to keep a lot of those scouts realistically. Like there's just a lot that goes into it. This is incredibly like you said, sitcom reality TV entertainment by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it's going to be interesting to see. Once again, we're going to revisit this because once we give it time, let's see what more reports come out. Let's see what general manager they hire because I think now they're the last team that needs to hire a new general manager. It's going to be interesting, to say the very least. Maybe this is a Joe Douglas 2.0. Maybe he gets another chance. Maybe he just keeps getting hired by head coaches that get hired when there's no GM in place. Who knows? But it's interesting what's going on in Jacksonville. Easily just in the two most chaotic teams in terms of hiring a head coach and what all went into that here for the early weeks of 2025. That being said, some teams were less chaotic and made some very interesting hirings. Rick kind of went through most of them. Let's kind of conjoin 2 or 3 of these together here. Actually, let's start with this first one. This one is honestly probably the least shocking of them all. 2 of them were the least shocking, Justin. Chicago Bears with Ben Johnson and the Patriots with Mike Vrabel. I think we were saying back to when Belichick was still there, it felt like destiny Vrabel could have been the head coach at some point. And we were saying that while he was the Titans head coach, right? Like it just felt like Mike Vrabel was always going to end up back in New England. And they fired Gerard Mayo after a year. And now they give a guy, a former player for them, you look at his tenure with the Tennessee Titans, regular season 54-45 record, postseason 2-3. They had three straight years of going to the postseason, and one of those years they were two division titles with the Titans, and one of those years they were the first seed in the AFC, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a guy he's found success, right? So it kind of felt like destiny in this case that Vrabel was going to find his way back in New England. I forget when last year he was necessarily fired. Like I'm sure he probably had a chance to be in some interviews last year, but he bided his time. He waited, and he's getting the job that, let's all be honest, we probably assumed he was going to be his at some point. Even if Gerard Mayo maybe would have gotten a second year, I could have seen an alternate scenario where Vrabel just agrees to wait one more year even. So it's a case where the Patriots quite literally get their guy, right? This guy was familiar with that organization, familiar with the owner. He was a player there. And now he, with some little bit of head coaching success, success is always an interesting thing to try to quantify. But for the Titans, relatively success, now goes back to a place where he kind of made his name. And now he gets to be the head coach there. And then the Chicago Bears, once again, I'm coupling the obvious ones together here. Ben Johnson going there. I've said this before that sometimes it doesn't always hold true, but sometimes coaches and like teams, when they fire a coach, they want to go for a guy on the other end for the most part of like what the philosophy was. So the Bears had a defensive guy in Matt Eberflus. They fire him. They obviously want to go for an offensive guy, especially with Caleb Williams there. We kind of always figured they were going to go with an offensive coordinator. They go with Ben Johnson, the Detroit Lions OC, is now going to be the Bears head coach. With some success the last couple of years, Ben Johnson's name was also brought up last year. He held off. He stayed in Detroit. They had a phenomenal offensive season. Obviously, it's kind of like what Rick is saying, sort of unfortunate, like the way the Lions season ended. But unlike with what you could argue about Glenn with the bad defensive performance, the Lions offense still, like, they put up points in their last game. It just so happened that they very much got outscored. And Ben Johnson is not necessarily fully responsible in any way, shape, or form for what the defense does. So he is Chicago Bears head coach, and it's going to be him and Caleb Williams paired up together. What do you make of those two? Kind of like I was saying, the obvious, like if we would have made predictions before, Justin, I think all three of us would have agreed. I'll even include Bars. I think all four of us would have agreed on Johnson to Chicago and Vrabel to New England. So what do you make of these head coach hirings for these two teams?
I don't know if I would have agreed with Johnson to Chicago. I mean, I get it. It makes sense on both sides, but he was a guy that was picky enough last year to forego all head coaching opportunities because he didn't feel the situation was correct. And it's not like Chicago is known for being a great situation. So while it does make sense on paper with the weapons they have, I didn't see that he was going to ultimately choose there. I was a little bit surprised, but I do like it. I mean, look, I think the guy could be a good head coach. He's a genius offensive coordinator in my mind. He understands the game. He can game plan things in a way that people don't see coming. I mean, his goal was to get 3 offensive lineman touchdowns this year. He was pretty close. Like the dude he just knows the game, and hopefully it could help this Chicago Bears team that has not been relevant for a very long time. Vrabel, everyone saw coming 100 miles away.
Yeah.
He's just a Patriot guy. I loved him in Tennessee. I thought he was an excellent coach. The only question here is now, is he super good at coaching and successful, or is he super good at having Derrick Henry on his team? Because that's a major thing. And look, he kept the defense relevant for a long time. And, the offense did have a good, rhythm with and without Derrick Henry. But can he coach on a team that, let's face it, is kind of devoid of talent at this point? They are missing a lot in terms of talent. And I get the Patriot way, this and that. And that day seems to have come and gone because they cannot get any real superstar talent to play there. I'm talking about, offensive skill positions. I'm talking about, like, outside of Christian Gonzalez, who's there? I mean, Judon found his way out. That was really their only pass rushing guy, right? I mean, did they have anyone that was 10 sacks this year?
I don't know off the top of my head, no.
So, like, what is happening in New England that nobody wants to play there? What happened to Boston, man?
Well, the rest of the teams are trying to do their best to hold it up. The Celtics are doing a pretty good job. The Red Sox, and the Bruins, well, it's not the best season for them. But no, yeah, it's one of those interesting things when you think about it, of where the Patriots have come in. Like, now this is a team like you. It's almost going to be weird because, and by the way, the sack leaders of this Patriots team were 2 different guys tied with 5. They only had 28 sacks as a squad. So not a ringing endorsement, to say the very least. And even, I think, from pure interception numbers, they only had 7 interceptions on the year. So this was not a defense that necessarily made plays in terms of, like, the definitive stat sheet, we could say. So it's going to be interesting to see what Vrabel could get out, because, like you said, like, if the decision to let go of Gerard Mayo had to do with performance and various things like that, then what is going to be the critique and grade curve on Vrabel? Now, I know not all head coaching hires are equal, and if we're being honest, let's predict it right now. Vrabel's probably going to get a long leash from Kraft, right? Like, what is going to be, like you just said it, with the talent issues, let's go through the offseason, like, what is going to be the expectations for this team for 2025? Because if we're being honest, they're probably really upset that they lost out on getting a higher draft pick this year. It doesn't necessarily mean they wanted to replace Drake May, but just a higher draft pick to get a more higher potential player there. It's tough. It's tough to say at the very least. But it will be interesting to see what Vrabel can do here. I mean, with the running back success they had, I mean, obviously, I don't think the running back market this year is what it was last year. I know you had brought it up here before, but it probably, if there's one thing that wouldn't surprise me, is Mike Vrabel's going to want to try to get a running back in there, more his speed. Like, I don't know if he's necessarily a Ramondre Stevenson kind of guy in terms of being the lead back. Maybe Stevenson could be the secondary back next year, but who knows?
Stevenson had an up and down year. I mean, he had some decent games, but he had a lot of turnovers.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if he's the guy there anymore.
Yeah, probably not. You know, he's been there 4 years. He's had sometimes six fumbles this year is not great. 6 fumbles is not great, to say the very least. So we'll see about that. And the last 2 head coaching hirings for us to discuss, saved them for last. Well, at least one of them for last. The New York Jets hiring Glenn, as Rick gave his opinion on there, and the Vegas Raiders, Justin. They got Pete Carroll out of retirement, let's say, and he's going to be the head coach there. So what did you make of, you obviously you keep up with Jets updates even more than Rick, I'm certain. So your thoughts of the Glenn hire, and then also I was shocked. I don't think I ever saw Pete Carroll's name at any point on any lists, and now he's going to Vegas. So what do you make of it for the last 2 hirings we're discussing here?
I'll start with Carroll first. That was a huge surprise to me. Also, I did see him as a rumor to Chicago. Supposedly they were negotiating at some point, but I didn't see him becoming the Raiders coach. It's a very interesting hire for all the reasons Rick said and more. But I don't know. I mean, he seems to have had figured out the NFL at some point, which is something that a lot of college coaches can't do. We'll see if it's a leadership thing in LA or if it's, Las Vegas, or if he really needs to bring in some new talent. They did hire GM, right? Spirotech?
Yes.
Spytech, whatever the hell his name is.
Yes.
So, yeah, that'll be good. I do like the construction of the Bucs roster, so if they can get any sort of talent in Las Vegas, it would be pretty cool for them to finally be good, because they have not been good since way before they were in Vegas. The Jets, like 2 years ago, I would have been like, this is a great move. Like, former Jets first round pick, excellent player. I do like him as a coordinator. I think that he did a lot with very little tools. I mean, think about how often we spoke about that defense just being devoid of any secondary pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, even though they did improve this year, they were also extremely injured. And all they did was swarm to the ball, play tough physical football, and force turnovers. And it didn't always work out in their favor defensively. We could admit that. But for what he had, the way he had that team playing, I think was, ideal for what you want as a Jets head coach. He's a tough, no-nonsense guy. It's all about details. You have to get your job, do your job right, or you'll hear about it. And he's going to hold people accountable, which was a major issue for the Jets the last few years. I like the Broncos GM, assistant GM, Moogie. I think that they also had really good roster construction. They forever seemed like a quarterback away. And then they got Bo Nix, who seemed to fit their head coach's system really well. They were all about defense. And I think that they were constructed in a way that Glenn likes to coach. If you look at his success in Detroit, it was all about pass rush. He knows how to get pass rushers. Like, this seems like a really, really good combination and system if it was on any other team but the Jets. But they're the Jets, and after this year, I have never been more deflated as a Jet fan in my entire life. They're still cursed. It doesn't matter really who they brought in. They could bring in God as a GM with Jesus Christ as the head coach, and I'm not sure they'd be able to win a game. So that being said, I'm sorry if I offended anyone, but I don't really care. Being a Jets fan is the worst.
Yeah, to say the very least. No. So it should be interesting. I mean, the Jets clearly don't listening to what I say in terms of usually going after a different guy, because they stay on the defensive side. They go with a guy who had a lot of success, another DC that had a lot of success on an NFC team. Let's see if that goes better. And yeah, I mean, look, Pete Carroll has a very extensive coaching resume. He succeeded in college. He succeeded in the pros. That's going to be interesting, because this looks more like a rebuild job in Vegas. And like, I would have thought that a guy his age would be down for that, but I don't know. Let's see. If maybe the Raiders just have this massive transformative offseason. I mean, he's got Brock Bowers and Max Crosby there.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, both of these teams have a lot of talent on them, and both of these teams seemingly were very disappointing this year. Like, way more disappointing than anyone had ever thought that they would be this year. And I'm not sitting here saying we thought the Raiders would be good. We definitely thought the Jets would be better than a 4-win team or 5-win team or whatever they won.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I just don't have any faith that these teams are going to turn it around next year just because they hired some new guys. It's the same story every 3-4 years with these teams.
And you also look at, like, you have to look at just the, when teams hire a new coach, the hope is that at some point it can lead them to the postseason. You kind of just have to look at the landscape of the AFC, right? Like, I think for the most part, barring catastrophe next year, the Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens are all but locks to make the playoffs. So that's 3 divisions right there. You look at the South, whose turn is it going to be to actually do well next year? It's going to be between probably the Texans and the Colts. So you lock in one of those 2 spots. The other team is going to compete towards the end. If the Bengals defense cannot give up 40 points a game, it feels like, then they'll probably have a fair shot to make it back, right? And the Chargers just had a really good season under Jim Harbaugh, which you assume if they add a little bit more talent, on the offensive side of things, is probably what they're going to go. And also they kind of have to rebuild the defense because, guys could end up leaving. Khalil Mack is set to be testing free agency here. Like, it's gonna be an intrigue. Like, so with me bringing that up, it's like, how many spots realistically, like just looking at it on paper, how many of the 7 AFC teams that made it do you think would drop out of the postseason? By law of averages, at least 1, maybe 2 if you're lucky. Are either of these teams going to be in a position to be able to take advantage? Is the question. Because then you don't just leapfrog who made the postseason, you have to leapfrog who was close. And the Dolphins, Colts, and Bengals were all up until the last week. So then in theory, you have to leapfrog multiple of them as well. So I don't know. It's going to be something, to say the very least, on what the Jets and the Raiders could do. The Jets, obviously, we know they have their GM now, right? They have the head coach. The next decision is going to be who's going to be the starting quarterback for the squad next year. So that's going to be the next big one. That's going to be the next domino to fall that'll end up playing a key decision.
Rumor had it that they were going to run it back with Rodgers.
Ooh,
that's the latest rumor I heard. That Glenn made it known that he would like to give it a shot with Rodgers, and Rodgers said he would either retire or play, depending on the coach, and was okay with this hiring and wanted to play with Glenn. That's the rumor I heard. I have no no legitimate backing for it. That's just the rumor I heard.
And so once we get official word on that, then you have to figure out the whole thing with Devontae Adams and him coming back and what that contract will look like. And then also you have to consider, he recorded stats, but I don't know how much it really felt like he was playing necessarily, but Hassan Reddick and what you're going to, he's a free agent. Would you consider bringing him back? Like, there's questions that need to be answered, which I'll at least give the Jets credit. They have now hired the 2 guys to help answer these questions in quick enough time. Like, we should hopefully get some clarity here over the coming weeks. So, that's kind of all you could ask for at this point, right? So, we have that. All right, Justin, shall we move on?
Sure.
We've talked about a lot of transactions. Let's talk about some football. Let's talk about some games that happened. Let's talk about our reactions to the divisional round of games. We know the matchups, of course, in the AFC and NFC title games. It will be the Kansas City Chiefs at home facing the Buffalo Bills, and it will be the Philadelphia Eagles hosting the Washington Commanders. Both those games happen tomorrow. Let's have our reactions, Justin, to the divisional round of games here real quick. Let's start with Saturday games from last week. Texans at Chiefs. We knew it was going to be tough for Houston, right? It was going to be the kind of game where it would test your mettle. You got to limit mistakes. You got to try to hold the ball away from Kansas City as much as you can. And they tried their best, but man, that Kansas City defense, like they made some plays. And it was to me, Justin, like, of course we could talk about like what the first quarter was, because the first quarter was close. It was 6-3. The Chiefs strike first in terms of getting a touchdown. The Texans are only down by 1 heading into the fourth quarter. But then the Chiefs defense came to play. George Karlaftis, man. What a performance that he had, specifically the second half. I think all of his sacks came in the second half of that game. A 3-sack game for the young defensive player. Absolutely etching his name for this team in a run. Uzoma also had 2 sacks himself. One of them definitely came in the fourth quarter. I forget where the other one came off of. But for me saying that, Justin, 8 sacks by this Chiefs defense. 8 sacks against the Houston Texans. And sometimes it's as simple as that. What did you make of this Chiefs defense just absolutely locking in the fourth quarter.
I want to know how or who they made a deal with to make all of these kickers miss these kicks. I mean, Kaimi Fairbairn was a pretty solid kicker throughout the year. He's not someone that's known for missing big-time kicks, and yet he missed 3, 4 to seal that game.
Yeah, two field goals. Like, we're talking about a
And
guy
an
who's
extra point.
Yeah, he's been on the Texans since 2017. This is a pretty good player, to say the very least.
I mean, just unbelievable. How many games have they won on missed kicks this year? 3, 4?
3 or 4, yeah.
That's unheard of. Forget the refs. I mean, don't forget the refs because it's pretty messed up. But they still had a chance. All they had to do was make their kicks. It's shocking to me how this team continues to win games in this fashion. It's got to let up sometime, right?
You would think. You would think, but we talked about it before, like with the consistency of Andy Reid being there and how just so much of a stalwart he is. Like, is it just ingrained? And Steve Spagnuolo too. Like, we were just talking about coordinators being hired, man. The Chiefs' offensive coordinators have been hired, bro. Steve Spagnuolo has got this defense playing at a high level.
If we were going to hire any failed coordinator in the league, a failed head coach in the league that's currently a coordinator, you would have thought it would have been Spags, right?
I think
Spags
legitimately
is almost the exact same boat as Shoddy.
Yeah, like, but I think what it is, man, is that ultimately Steve Spagnuolo looks at the situation and he's like, hey, you know what? Let me just stay here. Like, I think he's more than comfortable staying as the DC for the Chiefs for this entire run because look, he has 4 championships as a coordinator, man. He's got 4 championships, 3 with the Chiefs, 1 of them with the Giants when they upset that undefeated Patriots team.
I'm not saying not, but like
this guy knows. He knows.
These guys are ultra competitive. These guys want to be the guy. He wants to be a successful head coach. He
right, but
does. He's taken more than one head coaching job. You can't tell me that all of a sudden now he's like, no, I'm content with my.
Well, he's really only been a head coach one time. He was an interim head coach in 2017, but he has been just the one-time head coach when he was with the Rams.
This is the only time?
Yeah, for 3 years from 2009 to 2011, 10-38 over 3 years. To be fair to him, the St. Louis Rams were just not a well-run team, and he went to the Ravens. He went to the Saints, Ravens, and Giants for a bit, and since 2019. He's been in Kansas City, and that defense is phenomenal. Like, postseason, I talk about Andy Reid, Spagnuolo, like these defensive guys, and it's a couple different players here and there, right? Like roster overturns, new players come in, veterans, young players. These guys believe in what he does, 100%. And it's that discipline that you only get when you have that stability from your coaches, right? With Reid, who's been there for, like a decade at this point, and then Spagnuolo, who's been there since the start of this dynastic-type run. All the respect in the world. And this was a classic, grinded-out 23-14 win where the Chiefs have had some close games here. This is one of those close games here, and the defense came to play. And the offense did just enough. We'll see what has to happen then and more here as we discuss the AFC title game here in a bit. Let's talk about the other Saturday game, Justin. 45 points by the Washington Commanders as the Cinderella run continues, and they upset the Detroit Lions in Detroit, in the Motor City. Jared Goff threw 3 interceptions. Jahmyr Gibbs came to play, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. St. Brown had 137 yards. Jaden Daniels, though, just under 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Robinson Jr., 2 touchdowns on the ground. This Commanders team took advantage. I think really that's been the ultimate thing because I'll look at the box score here real quick. I think of Goff's 3 interceptions, and not even just the interception, because the Lions fumbled it early when they were up 7-3. The Commanders scored a touchdown after the fumble. You had the pick 6. The Lions' second interception, it was the end of the half, so it was no biggie. But then when the Lions on Goff's second interception, touchdown the next drive. So basically every single time the Commanders forced a turnover, it either led to a touchdown or the end of the first half and the end of the game. It's pretty good. That is opportunistic football right there, and that is making the most of the opportunities you get. They did not waste anything right there. By the way, one of the interceptions thrown by Jameson Williams. So, 4 interceptions on the day for Detroit football.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit just didn't play their game. They played the way that Washington dictated the game. And whenever you fall into that trap, the odds of you winning become low. They were playing from behind the whole time. That's crazy for that Detroit offense and defense, for that matter, no matter how injured they are, to be playing a game from behind, chasing an offensive juggernaut in Jaden Daniels and, the Washington Commanders. It's never going to bode well for you. Congrats to the Commanders on this historic run. We'll see if they can keep it up this week. I'm rooting for them, but I think that, we'll talk about it when we get to it.
Yeah, agreed. But it's very telling. Very telling. Like, just the Commanders, we talk about it with teams that have to face the Chiefs. You got to try to keep the ball away from them, dictate play, etc. Like, play the way you want it to be played. The Commanders played that game the way they wanted to, and it was apparently score. That's the way that this Commanders team, the Red Wave, ladies and gentlemen, forget the real world, the Red Wave, the communist wave in the NFL has come as the Commanders, the commies, just take over. Like, we're kind of oversimplifying it, but this Commanders team just legitimately, like, they drew blood in that second quarter. And once they took the lead off of the 58-yard pass from Daniels to McLaurin, right? When they got up 17-14,
Yep.
never relinquished the lead at that point. Never relinquished it. That's phenomenal. Like you said, this was the Lions defense. Like, yes, they were hurting. And to be fair, let's be fair to Detroit a bit. Like, they had a lot of injuries this year, especially on that defensive side of football. Like, what was it, 6 or 7 of the starters they had at the beginning of the season, like, ended up being hurt throughout the course of the year? Like, it's not easy to overcome that. Props to them that they were able to get this first seed, but the Commanders, man. They beat the Bucs in that first round. It's like, okay, nice, not bad. Conference championship game, here they come. And Justin, I'll bring this up again, but this is rarefied air because it's only happened. I went over it last week with Bars and Rick, just a handful of times, like about half a dozen times where a rookie quarterback has made it to a conference championship game. It's rare, man. This Commanders team, they're doing things. They're doing incredible things. Before we move on to the Sunday games, any last rights? Do you want to read any last rights here to the Lions, Justin? Try to make them feel better about the loss.
I think that injuries were a key issue here. So as long as you put the right coaches in place after losing your coordinators, and I think the best thing to honestly do would probably be keep a lot of this in-house. I'm sure that they have guys that they're thinking about offensively and defensively. As much as we thought it was your year, that doesn't mean we don't have hope next year, especially the way you were drafting, especially the way that the people you have on your team and the people that you have on rookie contracts. You bring in the right free agents, you draft the same way you've been drafting over the last 3 years, and I'm not super worried about this Lions team next year. Let's see what happens when they can stay healthy.
Right. Yeah, this is going to be a team that we're going to bring them back in the conversation next year for potentially winning the NFC North, being a contender for that top seed in the NFC. This is a good team. But like you said, they just need to do the right things, which for the last 3 years, they've been doing the right things. So we'll see. All right, Justin, Sunday games. There were questions when this team sacked this guy in the last week of the season. They want to rest him for the playoffs. Turns out that was the right move to make, and we've seen it now. 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, Saquon Barkley against the LA Rams. The Philadelphia Eagles defeat the Rams. And it wasn't just him. Justin, these gashes, 44-yard rushing touchdown by Hurts in the first quarter. 62-yard rushing touchdown by Barkley with just over a minute left. And then in the fourth quarter, 78-yard rushing touchdown. This Eagles team will gash you, man. And that's what they did in this one. They had some drives that were, they had a couple field goals, right? Jalen Hurts didn't have the cleanest game passing, 15 to 20, decent completion, but just 126 yards through the air, or 128, excuse me. Obviously, the Rams played some great passing defense. And Dallas Goedert was the leading receiver on the Eagles side of things. But it was just the rushing dominance of the Eagles in this game and what they were able to do here to overwhelm this Rams team that hasn't really been overwhelmed like that a ton. 285 yards through the ground. That's phenomenal. And this was an upset heavy picked game, right? I'll admit I had some doubts about it before I ended up picking the Rams last week, but there was a reason I had doubts because this Eagles team is great. I don't know where you were leaning towards for your predictions last week. This Rams team was good. This Rams team had all the makings of being an upset happening. Not against this Philly team, though. I think Philly reminded us in this one, Dustin, why they were a 14-win team this season.
Look, I doubted Philly going into the game, but I ultimately did pick them, only because they gashed the Rams when they played them earlier in the season. They did it again. I mean, this is going to be an interesting matchup because it's really going to come down to now the Philly defense in this NFC Championship game. Can they hold down Jaden Daniels in any way, shape, or form? We have no doubts that the Eagles are going to score points. It's can they stop another team from scoring points? Because we just saw if this Commanders team is firing on all cylinders offensively, they are among the toughest teams to stop scoring. And that's going to be the difference in whether or not you can get to a Super Bowl or whether or not you're going to have to watch your division rival go to the Super Bowl. This Eagles team can run the ball. They're going to score on anyone. That I have no doubt on.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And with how good the rushing attack was, especially in this game, you kind of almost forget that there is still some passing potential there, right? Like they still got A.J. Brown.
Forget about Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. And it's not like their backups are bad either. Who do they have there? They have Dallas Goedert, who had a great game.
Yep.
They have
Kenneth Gainwell as a second running back.
Jahan Dotson had a big game for them, the biggest game of his career as an Eagle.
Right, around earlier against the Packers, he was pretty good for them, to say the very least. Like it's this team has weapons. They just you got to give them credit. Well, Jahan Dotson, 1 touchdown, so first career receiving touchdown, let's say, in the postseason for him. But it's one of those deals where this Eagles team, they have the weapons, and I think what's been made clear, Justin, is that they know when to strike in this postseason. Specifically speaking, the game against the Packers and then this game against the Rams. It's clear that this Eagles team is built to really hit you hard when it comes to the home run play. When they go for that home run play, they're probably going to get it. That's what this postseason has shown so far. And what you're mentioning there that we'll get to here in a couple moments, what can this Commanders defense do to stop them? It's Saquon, man. It's Saquon. Jalen Hurts has been fine so far in the postseason. He hasn't done anything too ridiculous in terms of the eye-popping numbers like we saw 2 years ago in that postseason run. But this Eagles team, if they're saving their best performance in the NFC side of the conference for last, that could spell some danger here. So it's going to be something we'll talk about here in a couple moments as we'll analyze and then predict our AFC and NFC title game results. Last game from the divisional round weekend. Ravens, Bills, 27-25 final. Bills built up a 21-10 lead after the first half, right? Offense started to slow down a little bit. The Ravens get to within 2 entering the fourth quarter. Derrick Henry had a rushing touchdown in late in the third. They go for 2 points. They don't give it to Derrick Henry on the 2-point conversion there, and they miss it.
Either time.
I'll get to that. Don't you worry. Bills get a field goal. Ravens are driving, right? Like midway through the fourth quarter, they're driving. Pass to Mark Andrews for 17 yards, was it? Fumble. You start to get scared if you're a Ravens fan. The defense held strong, only let up a field goal. You're down 8. You'd only be down 7 if you had won for 1 earlier, or if you'd only be down 6 if you had given the football to Derrick Henry on the 2-pointer. But you're down 8. You got to hope the offense does something. And they do. Minute and a half left. Isaiah Likely, 24-yard strike from Lamar Jackson. You are 2 points away from tying the game. You have to go for 2 here. There is no other option. You got to go for 2. Simple play. They don't give it to Derrick Henry, but they do give it to Mark Andrews. And Mark Andrews, wide open, right there. Basically he was at the end zone, right? Or was he at the 1 yard line? I forget.
It was like right around the goal line.
Like he was right there. Like if he just catches,
he would have had a turn, but it was an easy touchdown.
Oh, forget the turn. Just like
score.
if he extends his hand, right? Like it would have been a touchdown.
Mm.
Drops the 2-point conversion. Both times you go for 2, John Harbaugh, you do not give it to Derrick Henry. Down 2, you lose by 2. The Buffalo Bills leave Buffalo with the win there. Justin, this was a game, to say the very least. This was a game where it looked like it could have gone one way after the first half. The Ravens fought back. They made it a game. Derrick Henry, 84 yards and a score. That's not bad. That's not bad in any way, shape, or form. Isaiah Likely, 73 yards and a score. Rashad Bateman had a touchdown early. Lamar Jackson didn't look great. He started to overcome it at the end, finishes with 254 yards and 2 touchdowns, strictly through the air. James Cook had a decent game. Josh Allen, passing yardage-wise, it wasn't a lot, but he made up for that with 2 rushing scores on the ground. Well, 20 yards on technically 10 carries. I don't know how accurate that is, but because, you got to do the quarterback kneel downs at the end. But the Bills escape with the win here. Justin, there's a lot of things we could talk about. You could talk about the performances of the quarterbacks. Neither one had that generational playoff or defining games here necessarily. I'm saying it on both ends. That Lamar finished with better stats, but it wasn't necessarily he didn't blow you away with the plays, right? But ultimately, it wasn't really the quarterbacks. It was other factors that led to this, I think, more than anything. And it is the Bills that walk away. What do you make of? You can talk about anything you want, of course. It doesn't just have to boil down to 2 decisions, but I think a lot of people, the first thing they're going to discuss is John Harbaugh going for 2 twice and not giving it to Derrick Henry either time.
Well, look, I think that they probably should have gone for 1 the first time. It's just I didn't understand. I'm not a fan of going for 2 until you need to go for 2. That being said, I'm not afraid of the killer instinct. If you're up and you think that going for 2 is but that's a different story. You know what I mean? In the situation they were in, it didn't make sense for me for them to go for 2. Especially the way that the game was going. I mean, I understand that they were playing from behind. They're not really a team built to come from behind, but that doesn't mean they can't. The Mark Andrews play call was the right play call. 10 out of 10 times they had that score. He's got to catch the ball. That's really what it comes down to. And you feel bad for a guy like that he's given his absolute heart and soul to that team. And he had the opportunity to bring them just 1 step closer. And he drops it in more ways than 1. So it's a rough loss for them. To me, that was the premier game in the AFC. That is the team that we should see in the Super Bowl, was the winner of that game. But it's hard to count out them Chiefs. Josh Allen played a great game there. The Bills as a team played a pretty solid game. Like Jerk said, you can't really ask more for Derrick Henry. Lamar came through clutch when he needed to come clutch, despite all of the rumors and issues that he had going into the game. But I mean, if we had another quarter, maybe it's a different game. But you only have 4.
You only have 4, and what a 4 quarters it was. It became a close game in that second half. I am back, ladies and gentlemen, despite the fact that my Wi-Fi is dropping, and we haven't had these problems in 2 years on this program. So our 2-year run might be coming to an end here. Still dwarfed by the 3-year run plus the Kansas City Chiefs run. No, it's like you said. It does ultimately come down to more than just those 2 decisions. I think we're oversimplifying a football game whenever we do that. But it is going to be the most talked about things. I think even more so, Lamar Jackson, the mistakes he made early were not great. They weren't necessarily indicative of a guy who is projected to potentially get his third career MVP award here in a couple weeks' time. But you do got to give him credit. They bounced back. He played mistake-free football in the second half. Didn't turn the ball over. I believe both his turnovers came in the first half, so he played a lot better in that second half. Mark Andrews, man. I was just searching up because I saw a post about it. It shocked me. You know he has 0 career touchdowns in the postseason? That's pretty wild. I know it's very 8 to 10 at this point. Somewhere
No.
in games? Yeah, he's played at least 8 postseason games.
Andrews has played 8 postseason games.
Yeah. He's been around for a while, man. He's not a new tight end. He's been around for
Not that old, though.
I think, hold on. I will confirm the numbers here real quick because I think part of the reason why my Wi-Fi dropped was because I was actually trying to search the numbers on my laptop. So let me pull up on my phone the Mark Andrews. But I saw something. So Mark Andrews is 29. He's going to turn 30 later this year for next season. Yeah, 8 career postseason games. I was right. How dare you? To be fair, 4 of them were starts, which is the weird thing. I think because he's been injured for the most part. But he's basically been the Ravens like tight end there for. He's been there since 2018, around the same time as Lamar. But postseason numbers-wise, 315 total yards in the postseason, 0 career touchdowns. He's got more fumbles lost than touchdowns in the postseason. And I think I was seeing in the averages, his averages is only like 40 yards per game in the postseason. Again, I'm not going to simplify it because it's not just on him, but there's no worse time than to have the 2 worst plays of your postseason career than the fourth quarter of the game to go to the AFC title game. So, and he posted about it, like he knows, like Mark Andrews is definitely a guy that's tough on himself, has high expectations of himself. He's very disappointed, of course, but you just overcome. And we kind of said with the Lions, this Ravens team is going to be one that's has a chance to be back in this place next year. Preferably, they would get to be in Baltimore if they had just a couple extra win or two, but this is going to be a Ravens team that is back here next year. But like you said, this is a team that struggles playing behind. Maybe they need to do something there. Like, yes, they play for the lead with a lead for the most part in the regular season. You gotta find a way to get some fourth quarter offense there, some 2-minute drills.
The way they're built, it's not like an issue with.
I mean, that's the way they built, but
that's
also the way they've lost the last 2 years.
Yeah, but I'm not changing the way they're constructed isn't the issue. It's a slow start in the playoffs is probably what the issue is. I mean, you can't come in and give up first quarter leads if you're built to play from ahead. That being said, I don't have any issue with the way they're constructed. They're a run first defensive built team. They're an AFC North team, dude. That's just who they are. And if out of all of them, except obviously the Bengals, who are not good this year, they have the real ability to come from behind because they have the ability to pass, even without any real top receivers. They
would have had their top guy if Zay Flowers wasn't hurt.
That's true. Zay Flowers also being hurt did not help them in this situation. But even still, Lamar was throwing touchdowns to save their life in that game.
Yeah.
It's more than just Lamar there.
I mean, we're meant. No, I'm not putting the blame on Lamar. I'm just saying in general.
I didn't say you were.
It's like you mentioned, they're an AFC North built team. The last time an AFC North team made it to the Super Bowl was the Bengals, and they weren't necessarily the prototypical AFC North team. That still to this day is a pass first team. And now, if you want to argue, well, they missed the playoffs the last 2 years. Fair. Let me argue the 2 years before that, Super Bowl appearance, AFC Championship game appearance. It's been a while since an AFC North mindset built squad has had a deep playoff run like that. It's been a while. I think it's fair. And I'm not saying to get rid of people. Like, I'm not saying you keep Derrick Henry, you keep various guys. I don't think the Ravens are going to get rid of Mark Andrews. That's not what I'm even thinking about. I think we're way too early after the loss to consider roster construction changes. But what have I always critiqued about the Ravens in the 3 years we've done this show, Justin?
I don't know.
It's about a certain individual.
It's they're not great dancers.
Second thing, you're close. 5th grade me was a better ballroom dancer than them. No, it's John Harbaugh, man. It's John Harbaugh. I have always pointed out, like, this is a dude that
going for 2.
It's dude against Buffalo. Has he ever converted for 2 against Buffalo with Lamar there? I think there was a regular season game a couple years ago.
That's true. There was a regular season game.
There was a regular season game between these two teams a couple of years ago where they go for 2 at the end and Lamar loses the ball. Stop. And it wasn't to tie. It was
happened with the Steelers games too. They've
stop.
cost their game. And at one point, you want to sit here and you say, I believe in my players.
two.
But at one point, you have to sit here and say, I'm the coach. And I have to make the right decision, the best decision. And it's not about believing in you or not believing in you. It's about playing smart football and playing to win the game.
That's the thing, dude. John Harbaugh, like, he does not get critiqued enough. Like, this is one of those dudes. He's taken that Super Bowl. He's riding it for his career because the boneheaded decisions he has made and the double-digit comebacks that have been allowed under his tenure as Ravens coach, a lot of other coaches would have had way more fire held underneath them compared to him. Like, this is a guy. He is like, look, you can be a champion and be flawed. John Harbaugh, there are flaws in his coaching. And if the Ravens don't figure that out, they may never get over the hill with Lamar. Like, who was it? I saw a quote earlier this week. I forget the guy that said it. I don't know if it was an active player or a former player. But they said that because Lamar is so talented, like, he's going to win a Super Bowl at some point. Like, it just feels like it's going to happen for him. I disagree. There's no
Aaron
such
Rodgers
thing.
won that first Super Bowl, and everyone
never made it back.
What, 25, 26, and everyone said, man, it's not when, it's how many.
Yeah.
And guess
It
how many
turned
times
out.
he's been back?
Oh, back? None. He's never made it back to a Super Bowl. He's been to a bunch of conference championship games, which I will give a little bit of leeway to him. Like, the Packers in conference championship games post that Super Bowl, like, their average defense lets up 30 a freaking game. But, like, if you're, like, there's no such thing. Like, Cam Newton, 15-1, MVP, goes to the Super Bowl. They lose to the Broncos. Oh, the Panthers have a chance to come back in the next 2-3 years. Cam Newton's there. Never made it. Never. I think they only made the playoffs once or twice after.
They were never relevant again.
Never. Like, there is no such thing in any way, shape, or form as a guarantee that you'll get there.
Well, you got to go back to that Pat McAfee story. He's a rookie.
Yep.
They're in the Super Bowl. They're playing the Saints. They lose the halftime kickoff because of an onside kick. They end up losing the game. They're in the locker room, and everyone's acting like it was a death. And he said, we'll get him next year. And they say, listen, rookie, that's not the way it works.
So grit on the gridiron. I don't know if this is an extra account of the Podfather. Newton was a loser. Always didn't like him. Loudmouth. So I mean, this feels like something Rick would say. I don't think it's necessarily Rick himself.
This screams Panthers fan. Like, just as a Jets fan, I feel the pain that you're going through right now. Like, it's tough to watch guys, and then they're like, "Oh man, you're gonna be fine. Like, your player's the best," and then he doesn't do anything. Like this, I feel your pain, man. I feel it.
I mean, shout out to Grit on Gridiron for watching the program. We appreciate you, good sir, or man, be either. Pat. Look at this. Packers fan first, NFL fan second. So
there you go.
Relate more to the Aaron Rodgers discussion we were having, actually, realistically, in what they might have some feelings.
Listen, Rodgers brought him to the promised land. I got no sympathy anymore. I'll never see a Super Bowl. You're a lucky person. I'll never see it.
Oh man, but as we talk about that, going back to it, there's no such thing as a guarantee you will ever get back to that point. And there's no such thing as a guarantee that Lamar will win a Super Bowl. It is very much a they got to get it done type deal. And John Harbaugh, he hadn't got it done since the first one. And let's remember, they were this close to blowing a 20-point lead in the Super Bowl. Let's not forget that.
Yep.
Well, if you were just talking about if the game was 5 quarters, if that Ravens 49ers Super Bowl had a 5th quarter, the 49ers probably win that game. They were unstoppable in that second half. Unstoppable, to say the very least. I would try to bring up the box score for myself, but I'm afraid it's going to take away our connection again, so I'm not going to do that. But ultimately here, like,
now is, all that's in the past, and is it the final of the year for someone to dethrone Patrick Mahomes?
Perfect transition there, brother. Let's get to the game analysis of these two championship games. Let's save the AFC one for last. NFC Championship game, Commanders at Eagles, the 3rd time this season that these two squads are facing each other. Pretty familiar with each other, especially because both those matchups were late in the year as the NFC East was kind of up for grabs here, Justin. We've seen what the Commanders can do. They could score. They could score, to say the very least. A little bit of a question on the defense, though, especially after this Lions game. They did still leave up 31 points. And Saquon and the Eagles seem like they could very much put up 31 points if given the opportunity. So what to you, Justin, is going to be the key X factor here too? And I brought this up last week. Justin, a rookie quarterback has never won a conference championship game when they've gotten there. This would be the first time if it happens.
Mhm.
What can Jaden Daniels do to break that? And what is the key factors of this game in particular, this NFC Championship game?
Jaden Daniels can score. And Jaden Daniels can hold the ball. And then Jaden Daniels can score again. And that's pretty much all Jaden Daniels can do to win this game, is to continuously score and just keep the pedal to the metal, man. Keep your foot on the throat of the Philadelphia Eagles, because once they get ahead, they are very difficult to contend with. They are built to play from ahead. Just like the way the Ravens are constructed. They have an excellent secondary. Let's face it, they have an excellent defensive line too, a young defensive line, and they can run the ball like nobody else. Don't get me wrong, they can score in a hurry too, which is what makes this Eagles team scary. It's something that we haven't really seen from them a lot this year, because they not only have they not really needed it, but they've also had their fair share of injuries and issues. But this Eagles team can hurt you in so many different ways. If you want to beat them, you have to get ahead early and stay ahead, because this is not a team that you want to have to score against to stay alive. You want to get ahead and keep the ball out of Saquon's hands and keep the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands.
As great on the gridiron comments there, stack the box all game. They win easily. If they don't, Eagles win. I will say,
I don't necessarily agree with that though.
The
I've
Commanders,
seen so many games where AJ Brown has gone off for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns.
That's the
on
thing.
The Titans, on the Eagles, we can't sit here and say Devontae Smith can't score, and that Commanders secondary is rough, dude.
Yeah,
it's been rough for a long time, and they improved it this year, and it's still rough.
Dan Quinn and co. and the DC, like that defensive coaching staff, have done a good job at hiding it, but that defensive secondary is still the weakness of that defense. And look, I know they haven't had necessarily great games on paper, but as he says, between Jaden or Jalen, it doesn't necessarily need to be about the quarterback. It could be the wide receivers. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, like, just because they haven't put up the games yet doesn't mean they won't. There's very much a chance that both of them could go off against an Eagles secondary. Marshawn Lattimore can't guard both these dudes. He cannot guard both of them. AJ Brown is on one of them is going to put up 100+ yards in this game.
Yeah.
One of them is going to go off. And it's one of those things where Jalen Hurts and Saquon, or especially Saquon, could just be secondary, because the second the Eagles get off one 40+ yard play here through the air, that's going to reopen the trenches. And that is what could lead for Saquon. Like, yeah, it's very much a thing where, like, this Eagles team understands. It's very much a thing where this Eagles team understands. We are also pumped for both games. Good start. And also, thank you for the sub, Girl on the Gridiron. We love it. Hey. We appreciate you joining the fold here on the Sports Agents of Chaos. But, like, it's legitimately a thing to consider where the Eagles receiving corps, like Justin just said, they could go off. These are top tier players.
I just want to also comment. Like, I don't disagree. I think Jaden is more valuable to his team, because we've seen so many comments. I don't want to lose that one. Jaden is more valuable to his team's success, but I think at this point in their careers, I'm still taking Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
They have the same skill set, really. One has been more consistent. One's more injured, but it's had a longer career.
And let's also consider, like, how much we forget. Like, Jalen Hurts was going to be the Super Bowl MVP if the Eagles had gotten the job done against the Chiefs.
He was good. He played really well.
He played phenomenal. I think, didn't he put up over 300 yards in that game? Not combined, passing.
Yeah,
he carved up. The worst the Chiefs defense has looked the last 2.5 seasons has been Jalen Hurts and what he did to them in that Super Bowl. Like, this is a really good team, man. Like, this is a guy who showed up. Like, he can show up again. It's one of these things where I think, like you said, it ultimately boils down to, I think the X factor is ultimately the Commanders' defense. Can they in any way, shape, or form hold off the just gluttony of talent the Eagles have? Or is this going to end up being a case where the Eagles just overwhelmed them, like the Eagles sort of overwhelmed the Packers. But Saquon, and then even though the final score was very close, it was a one-score game, the Eagles' offense was just massive against the Rams. And the defense stepped up when they had to. They got the final plays at the end that they had to as well. It's going to be a very interesting NFC title game. But Justin, as we very much know, it's ultimately going to end up on the AFC side of things, where we talk about a lot. This is going to get the most discourse. It is going to be the first, I believe, of the two games that is happening tomorrow. We just confirmed that. Let me pull up the schedule. No. The Eagles Commanders game is the first one. Excuse me. 3 p.m. on Fox tomorrow, ladies.
You thought they were not going to put a Bills Chiefs?
I was confused. Look. My eyes get crossed sometimes. Leave me alone. I'm just a poor lad in the Northeast. But in the second game tomorrow on CBS and Paramount Plus, the Buffalo Bills go into Arrowhead to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Buffalo versus Kansas City. Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes. We've heard it before, and we're going to hear it again, Justin. We talked about this game last year because they faced off last year. The simple storyline is, can the Buffalo Bills overcome, forget playoff demons, this is specifically Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid demons at this point. Can they overcome the Kansas City Chiefs this time? This is the second time they're facing in the AFC title game, because the other two previous times were both divisional rounds. The first time was an AFC championship game. So facing them for the second time in the AFC title game, the fourth time overall in their postseason careers, can McDermott and Allen and co. overcome Andy Reid, Mahomes, and Kelsey? And I think for the third time of those four, it's going to be in Arrowhead. Whereas we know what's on the line legacy-wise. It's the three-peat for Kansas City. No Super Bowl era team has ever three-peated the NFL. We've had a lot of repeat champions. We've never had a three-peat. And I'm trying to even rack my brain around. I don't even know if... I don't think a team that has repeated has ever made the Super Bowl in what would have been the third consecutive year. Like, I think every other repeat champ has failed to make the Super Bowl in that third year running. So it's very much a case where this is legitimate first time ever happening on the line here for the Chiefs. But it'll also be a first time thing for the postseason of the Bills. So, Justin, let's take away just the antics and the big stories that are not focusing on the game. What has to happen for Buffalo to dethrone Kansas City here in the AFC?
They needed it's a good question. They need to get the ball out of Josh Allen's hands quick. As much as they rely on him making plays and being able to hold the ball and run when he needs to, they need to find a way to get that ball down the field and hit guys like Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman early and often, and really keep that Chiefs defense on their heels. Because if they're going to get after him and they're going to get after the quarterback, then there's going to be issues later on in the game. That Chiefs defense is nasty. As good as we can sit here and say the offense is, as good a quarterback as Mahomes is, as great as Travis Kelce is, that defense is what's been winning them games. They get after the quarterback, they play well in the secondary, and they can force turnovers. And they get the ball out of teams' hands quick. They leave a lot of time for their offense to operate. So what I would do is I would scheme up early and often some big some big down the field throws that can come out quick, slant routes, just ways to scheme your guys open so that you can get your receivers started early and get Josh Allen started early. You want to be the first team that scores in this game. And I know you want to do that in every game, but I think it's more important when you play a team like these Chiefs that you are the first team on the board, because there's so many factors at play when you get down, when you play a team like this.
Yeah, I agree. I've argued in the postseason, to me, the performance of James Cook is probably what's going to be the X factor for the Bills' run this year. And I think that's still going to end up being the case. What he does to match up, because this is also like, let's key this out here. The Chiefs' rushing attack, and we only have a game to work off of here, it was fine against the Texans. It wasn't crazy. the Chiefs rushing has been a bit of a key to some of their close AFC wins that they've had in the past, right? Just the performances of their running backs. You think of Jerick McKinnon and what he's done for this team on a handful of occasions. You think of when he looked like he had a career for himself, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, he had some performance, like a decent game or two in the postseason. Like, can the return of Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco, can those two guys together do enough for this Kansas City team in the postseason, that tandem, in this AFC Championship game, to go up against this hungry Bills defense? Can James Cook outmatch those two? Can he put together just a really good game? Efficient carries for him, I think, are key. But like you said, if Josh Allen, look, we know, and I know everyone's going to point this out. If you watch the show enough, I have critiqued Josh Allen partially jokingly, partially seriously, as I'm making up words by saying partially, but partially joke, partially serious. I have critiqued him in the past for lack thereof performances he's put together. With Josh Allen, you say, let me point this out. He is one of the top 4 quarterbacks in the NFL. He arguably probably has the strongest arm in the league, right? He has great efficiency. He can make plays happen, man. This dude has won this franchise so many games over the last couple of years. He's the franchise quarterback. He is the guy. He is one of the few quarterbacks that deserve and can go head-to-head with Mahomes. Just strip away the accomplishments, strip away the games. Keep it simple. From a talent of a quarterback perspective, Josh Allen is in that echelon of guys that can compete with Mahomes. Legitimately. For as much as he can do, like you said, that Bills team needs to be hyper efficient. Because if, like you said, if he holds on to the ball too long, if he has a couple of those dropbacks where his first option isn't open, not saying he's a first read guy, I'm just saying if his first option isn't open and he's immediately looking for the second, that Chiefs defense could get there. They just had 8 sacks. And Josh Allen, that body's taken a lot of damage over the last couple of years. It's going to take one bad play where he'll get up, he'll look fine, but it might affect him for the next play on that possession. It might affect him on the next drive. You never know. This needs to be the most efficient Bills offense we've ever seen. Yes, you could try to go score for score with the Chiefs. You tried that a couple years ago. You lost. You could try to hit the home run play. Stephon Diggs didn't do it last year. You could go for that again. I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying you have to do it. But if you can avoid the Chiefs getting to you, specifically talking about Allen, if you can make it so where that defense doesn't lay too much of a hit on him here and there, if you could avoid that happening, get those possessions, get those good chunk carries by Cook, you can and probably should win this game. I said this last year. If not now, then when? That needs to be the Bills' slogan for this postseason run. If not now, then when? Realistically, it would be then after this year, because are the Chiefs actually going to four-peat? Probably not. We would hope not. We would hope not, but if not now, then when? You have a chance. What it would do if you are considered the team that ends the Kansas City Chiefs run at the three-peat. That's big. Granted, the NFC team, that if it ends up being Chiefs versus whoever, could get that glory by beating them in the Super Bowl, but you know what I mean. The difference it'll make for you if you could pull that off. That's big, man. That's big. And that's why it's going to be such an interesting thing to talk about, such an interesting thing to look at. This is going to be so intriguing to see what the Bills do, what that offense is scheming of. And Bass needs to come in. He's got to get some hits, right? Because you mentioned the stuff with the field goals. They got a bit lucky last year, right? With Bass and his missed field goal at the end of that game. It's going to be a similar thing here. It's you're going to have to rely on if a drive ends early. Do you take a risk? Do you maybe try to go for that cheeky 2-pointer early, right? These are all questions that this Bills team is asking itself right now. They're planning it's Saturday. They've done all the talking. They're probably having final conversations today. It all comes down to this, man. That's what makes it so very interesting and so very tantalizing. So with that being said, championship game predictions. Now, Justin, before the two of us go, I do have the predictions for not just from the Podfather directly, but I also have Bars' prediction. He gave me his prediction. Yes, I asked him. So I will read Bars' prediction here first. He gave me a full thing. His prediction, his Super Bowl matchup here, basically, might as well put it together, is the Washington Commanders versus the Kansas City Chiefs. He said Chiefs are three-peating. I've said it all season. Would love to see Josh do it, but unfortunately not this script. Close game. Chiefs covering -1.5. So, Bars always loves reading the lines for the people. And then for the Eagles one, call it the Eagle hate, but I've bet against this kid enough where I can't do it again. Give me the Miracle Kid taking the Commanders to the Super Bowl. 3-peat versus the next one up. Eagles roster is better everywhere except the most important position. Kid clears it. Kids clear it. Dan Quinn, third game versus Barkley. You got to hope he has a plan. That's a very key thing there. You do have to hope that he has a pretty good plan there. Actually, once I read the Podfather's prediction, Justin, if you help me out here, give your AFC title game first. I want to quickly look up what Jaden Daniels' stats were against the Eagles this season to see how he performed against them earlier. So I'll do that after I read the Podfather. The Super Bowl America wants. His predictions are Washington 34-31 and Buffalo 27-20. He has a Washington versus Buffalo Super Bowl. His third line, if it's Kansas City, Philadelphia, I will refuse to watch on principle. So there's that. I'm going to quickly look up Jaden Daniels' stats. Justin, your AFC Championship game prediction first.
It's after really 5 years of success and watching this AFC team play, it is so hard to count out the Chiefs for whatever reason. They are just always that team. But that being said, man, if there was ever a year for Buffalo, this is the year. Like every other time that they've been in the playoffs, what have I said? There's something off about that team. There's something not quite right. There's something missing from this team as a championship. And I got to say, what I really think it might have been was a different feeling and success rate from Josh Allen. I don't know what it is, but this year feels different for me, for Buffalo. And if they were ever going to go to a Super Bowl and have a chance to win, it would have to be through Patrick Mahomes. It just has to be. This is the way it had to have gone for them. And that being said, I'm gonna take the Bills. I don't know why.
Let's go.
I don't know why, but I have the feeling that it's Buffalo this year. I've been wrong with my gut feelings before. It's happened, but I don't know what it is, but I feel strongly that this Buffalo team is going to have what it takes, and they're going to take out Kansas City.
Real quick, before I give my AFC title game prediction, Jaden Daniels against the Eagles this year, because Bar's mentioning it with the Saquon thing, right? First game, the Eagles and Commanders played. Jaden Daniels, modest game, only 191 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception through the air. Very limited rushing-wise, too. Only had 18 rushing yards in that game. The second game, towards the end of the season, 258 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 81 yards on the ground. So key there for the Eagles. Just want to give more context for the people. You know what? You mentioned all the success the Chiefs have had. For all of that success, you would think I'd be a lot better at predicting these games for them. But when they have won, I have predicted them to lose. And when they have lost, I've predicted them to win. So I'm just completely off kilter when it comes to Mahomes, even though I know in the back of my mind, this is the best quarterback in the NFL for the last however many years. I have made it a joke that whenever I predict something, the opposite happens, clearly. So I have 2 options in my hand, Justin. Do I run with the Buffalo Bills? Do I put my stock behind Josh Allen? And do I curse America for a chance at a 3-peat? Or do I say I'm finally going to pick Patrick Mahomes and give one of my arch nemesis a chance at a Super Bowl? I like to make chaos happen. The Kansas City Chiefs will win this football game, is my prediction. Which means the Buffalo Bills are going to the Super Bowl, so thank you. Congrats, Buffalo, for that. Because I can never predict the Kansas City game correct for my life, except for last week in the divisional round. Like Bar's kind of said it, man. They've won in so many different ways this year. They're such a playoff hardened team. I understand what you're saying about Allen, Justin. I think what you're saying is that this is the most composed he's ever felt in a postseason. I could believe that.
Yeah, it's been an all-year thing. There's just something different about the way he's performing, the way he's playing, the way he's handled himself, the way they're winning games. It's just different for me. And
I don't blame you, but there's just this Kansas City team, man. They've just won in so many different ways. It's so many different scenarios.
But doesn't it feel like they've exhausted that at this point?
They've been here too many times to not see. You could say that, but then here's the thing: when was the last time?
Anyway.
When was that?
Like I said, I don't want to count them out.
This what I'm saying.
Differently.
When was the last time the Kansas City Chiefs scored like 40 plus in a postseason game? This could be that. Like, for all we're talking, this could be the way where they're just like, all right, and just crush it. I'm not saying
it. I think that's a Super Bowl thing for me. I don't think they do it this game. I don't think they're putting a 40 burger on the Bills. I just
never know. You never know. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that is what they're going to do, but like they find a way every single time.
I know what you're saying,
especially against the Bills. Like,
I know what you're saying. They always find a way. They do. So, that makes them a great team.
I'm gonna bet my money on that. Money boy Mahomes, as me and a friend of mine back home always say. I'm gonna pick the Chiefs, which means I'm kind of giving the Bills a path to the Super Bowl. So you're welcome, Buffalo. Mazel tov to you for my prediction, because I just can never get it right apparently. NFC Championship game, Justin. I will give my prediction first. You'll be last for us. It's tough. I said this a couple weeks ago over dinner with some friends of mine, that even when the Lions were still in the postseason, I actually thought the Eagles were. I was starting to lean towards them. I faltered a bit last week. I don't know if I can falter again this week. I think the Eagles are going to win this game. I think it's been a miracle run by Jaden Daniels. I'm not saying it can't continue. Kid's great, but this Eagles team, like we said, we have not seen the best of them in the postseason. I don't think we have, and that's got to be a bit of a scary thought to have that. That's what it's going to be, because while you can argue on one hand, Dan Quinn's going to see him a third time, he might have something very fair. On the other hand, you gotta wonder if this Eagles defense, that they could figure out the mistakes they made from the game a couple weeks ago, like about a month ago at this point, and what they could do, what they've done, what they'll do different, and then what they could bring back from the first time they faced them, where they were able to actually limit Jaden Daniels. One of the worst is not the right word, because he doesn't necessarily have terrible games as a rookie QB, but one of the more middling performances he had this season was against the Eagles. And this game happening in Lincoln Financial, that's big too. Like, I'm not saying this is a Jaden Daniels thing. I'm saying overall, can this team win a third straight road playoff game? It's happened. I'm not saying it can't, but can this one in particular, does it have the DNA?
Has it happened?
I think the Giants on one of their runs.
The most ever road playoff wins for a quarterback is 4 in a career.
That's got to be Eli, right?
Mark Sanchez.
Eli doesn't have 4 road postseason wins?
I think that a lot of the times when they won, they were home. He might have. Well, I don't know if they consider the Super Bowl, because it's almost never really a home game.
No, I know that, but because I'm thinking when
Mark Sanchez is tied, I know. I don't know if Eli has 4 road playoff wins.
Well, this is what I'm thinking. The first Super Bowl run they made, they beat the Packers in Lambeau, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could have sworn there's another road playoff game there.
Could have been.
Because when they went,
not in a season, in a career.
No, I know. I'm talking about the career. So then I'm saying in the second time, the second Super Bowl run, they were at Green Bay again, right, against the Packers, because the Packers went 15-1, and then I think they were at San Francisco in the other one. So I think he has at least 3. I'm trying to think if there's a 4th one in there. It's just that first Super Bowl run. I'm trying to remember if there were 2 road games, like between the divisional and the conference championship, or not.
What's this? I don't know. I might be spewing nonsense.
No, I'm not disagreeing, because Mark Sanchez, like, you guys were basically
the internet's disagreeing.
You guys were basically a wild card team both times, I think, right? When you made the AFC title games.
What's that? Is it for one team? Maybe no, that can't be it either.
That does this. Irregardless, I'm picking the Eagles to win this one out. So I will, unfortunately for the Podfather and many, I have a Eagles and Chiefs Super Bowl rematch from a couple years ago. This Eagles team had a terrible end to last year. I don't think you could discount motivation. This team is motivated to get back to the Super Bowl. It is a unfinished business type feeling for this Eagles team, and I think they're going to do their best to try to finish that business. So there's that. Justin, your NFC Championship game prediction.
That's crazy. I really, really, really do like the Commies, but I am also going with the Eagles for lots and lots of reasons. I mean, one, as good as a rookie quarterback is, he's still a rookie quarterback. This is the best defense that he's going to be playing in the postseason so far. A team that's already seen him twice. I understand the idea that you would think that Dan Quinn has a game plan for Saquon Barkley. I got news for you. 14 teams this year had a game plan for Saquon Barkley. He hasn't had less than 100 rushing yards since November in a game. And that's early November, and it was a Cowboys game that was a blowout. This Eagles team was built to bring in a guy like Saquon Barkley and just dominate. We were worried. The one question going into the season was, the two questions was, A, is this offensive line good enough with the replacement of their center in Kelsey? And 2, could Saquon stay healthy? Both of those things have proven true, and it's the reason that they are such a dominant force today. And let's not sit here and act like this isn't the same offense that took the Chiefs pretty much to the brink in the Super Bowl they played 2 years ago. It is.
Yeah.
Very much so the same offense. Now they just have a much better running back, and it's not like they had a bad running back then. So to me, you got to go with the proven team. I love what the Commanders have done so far. I do believe that they will be back in situations like this. I think Dan Quinn's an excellent head coach. I think that they really found something. They're going to have to make some obvious roster adjustments, but every team's goal is to get better every year, whether or not you win or lose. So congrats to them on a good season, but I'm giving it to the Eagles, which means that we have 4 different Super Bowl combinations.
Yo, I was just about to point that out. We've all picked a different matchup. The Podfather has Buffalo versus Washington. Bars has Kansas City, Washington. I have Kansas City, Philly, and you have Buffalo and Philly. That's perfect. That's not pre-planned, ladies and gentlemen. We all have legitimately different predictions.
It's not planned out that way.
Variety is the spice of life, and you get variety here on the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. More variety and more unpredictability than any AEW show.
We should have made this a contest. What happens to the winner?
That's a phenomenal question. I don't know. Maybe they get a cake. Who knows? By the way, real quick, most career postseason road wins, I just searched that up, is Tom Brady. Yeah. So we're missing something there. Anyway,
I don't know what I'm thinking of with that Sanchez record, but he's got something like that.
Maybe before a certain age, or like something like that. All right. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are just about done here. The meat and potatoes has been done. We have talked head coach hirings and general manager. We've talked about we recapped the divisional round and talked a little bit about the teams that lost. We talked about the conference championship games and gave our predictions for all of you. That leaves one more thing, ladies and gentlemen. You know how we end the show. He's not here live and in living color to give it in person, but he is here to do it from a video perspective. So without much of further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's end this per usual with the one, the only, Rand Podium.
I've decided to make tonight's Rand Podium short, sweet, and to the point because, honestly, these things don't really require a long-form explanation, but, that's just very simple. Number 3 on today's Rand Podium, Dan Hurley, you are not the best college basketball coach out there. Shut up. Number 2, LeBron James, you don't deserve to be an all-star starter. Wembanyama does, obviously. And number 1, sports minutes on the radio that don't have a beginning, middle, and end, they're annoying and stupid. Like, in the past, sports minutes that were on, like, CBS Sports Radio or whatever, gave the anchors the right to have their opinions. Now they're just 2 goddamn sentences that have no real point to anything. They're just telling you a news story. It's called a bit, basically. It's stupid. Bring back the long-form sports minutes with opinions that matter or are controversial. That's all there is to it. Stop with the stupidity, everybody. Have a good one. Go Commanders. Go Bills. Do it for America.
So I had no idea who was giving us his conference championship games there at the predictions at the end. If I would have known, I would have actually left that for the very end. As I always say, I don't listen to these beforehand because I want to be surprised. So Justin, Dan Hurley, not the best college basketball coach. LeBron James, fraud here, according to Dan, according to Rick. And then to end things off, sports radio, be better. Which, honestly, I don't necessarily disagree. But also, sports radio, please exist because God, sports radio just doesn't hit the same as it used to, eh? But that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. We had plenty of fun here with the cameo appearance from the Podfather on multiple occasions. Bars giving us his predictions here at the end. We're hoping to get Bars on here at least one of the next 2 weeks. If we have to settle for one over the other, we'll definitely take the Super Bowl episode with him, of course. But we're going to discuss that with our guy here. We'll make these negotiations happen behind the scenes to get him back. But ultimately, it's been a great postseason. We've had a lot of fun reacting to the games, watching some of the games. The football got better from the wild card to the divisional round. Let's hope for some really close conference championship games here, Justin. And then the superb owl itself is in a couple weeks' time. Our third our third season of looking over NFL football is coming to an end here, Justin. But it'll just then continue on further and further and further to the end of time, or do we get bored? But we hope you never get bored of us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Fun, Football, and Chaos here on the program. Take care, all of you beautiful, beautiful human beings, and goodbye.